Am I the asshole for reporting two teens for their behavior? Apologies, this is on mobile, so sorry for the format. I, 20F, was walking to the grocery store where two teens, 13-14M, walked by me and made a comment about my race. They muttered, "Ching chong, thanks for the virus." For reference, I'm Korean and live in a predominantly white city. I was absolutely appalled and asked them to repeat themselves. They said they were shocked I spoke English so well and then proceeded to stretch their eyes thin and pretend to be Asian. They walked off laughing, but I realized they were wearing their soccer jerseys with their numbers on them. I made a mental note of the jersey color and the numbers and went home to look up the league. I live in a small city, so there's not many soccer leagues, so it was pretty easy to figure out what league they belonged to. I ended up emailing their coach and basically filled him in on the behavior of his players. I also made sure to state that this behavior is unacceptable and that I would assume he wouldn't want his team to be represented like this. He emailed me back today and apologized profusely. He said he talked to the boys and that they would not be playing on the team for the remaining games. The boys also sent me an email apologizing for their behavior. I felt pretty proud about calling out this racist behavior, so I told my brother, 16M, about how the boys were punished. He basically called me a Karen, and how I ruined these boys' summer because they would not be playing on the team. He also said that since they were young and apologized, they probably didn't mean it. I personally think that 13 is old enough to know better and act like a decent human being, but my brother seems to disagree. Now I keep overthinking and think I might have overreacted. So Reddit, am I the asshole? Edit. Thank you everyone for your kind words and reassuring me that I did the right thing. Also thank you for the rewards, but please, if you have the resources to do so, considering donating to those who have been victims of the violent Asian hate crimes in America. Not the asshole. Better to teach them that lacking basic human decency has consequences now than when this behavior of theirs escalates to a point where the authorities may need to get involved. I agree with you that 13 is old enough to understand right and wrong and act like a decent human being. You did the right thing by standing up for yourself. I'm sorry you went through this experience. Not the asshole, and I'm glad the coach took this seriously. Also, you didn't ruin the boys' summer. They did by being racist little assholes. Not the asshole. The reason we have so many R's in the world is because they are often allowed to get away with appalling behavior with no consequences. 13 is old enough to know being an active racist is bad. And if they didn't know that before, they surely do now. Not the asshole. A tolerate society cannot be tolerant of intolerance. They need to learn that actions have consequences before they hurt anyone else. The fact that your brother seems to be more worried about the summer plans of two little racists, instead of the fact that you were verbally abused in public, is a little worrying. Not the asshole. Calling out that kind of behavior and making the assholes engaging in it pay the consequences are the only ways that it will be stopped. Don't want to have your summer ruined? Don't be a racist asshole. Simple. Not the asshole. And they are old enough to know that their behavior was wrong. You did good. When someone does wrong, the environment will correct their behavior. They should be happy that they're learning this early instead of when having gotten older it could be much worse in that case. Not the asshole. Although I think that the kids' parents should be punished more so, that's where most of racism comes from. Not the asshole. Boohoo, they don't get to play soccer games. That's nothing compared to the fear, anxiety, and humiliation that interactions like this cause for the victim. Maybe those fools will learn that words do matter and they do have serious consequences. Not the asshole. They need to learn there are consequences to their actions. Not the asshole at all. Props to you for calling him out and contacting the coach. I'm Asian too, and if that happened to me I'd be so mad. Like, so much of the time people get away with that kinda stuff, so I'm glad they aren't allowed to play the remaining games. They deserve it. Not the asshole. They didn't apologize until they were punished. They're being little AHs. Okay, my dad is a high school football coach, and he holds his players to a standard. When I was in school he'd ask me if any of them were billing or harassing people, as they often wore their jerseys to school. One actually started to bully and torment me. They didn't know who I was, I looked nothing like my dad at that point, and all my friends who were on the team had never met him, as he never picked me up from anything. He did that on purpose so he and the other coaches could correct behaviors as needed. It was kind of funny though when I snapped at one guy about his behavior towards a teacher. I told him I hope he liked running, cause that's all he was going to do for practice that week. He didn't believe me. He started being nicer in class after that. Not the asshole. The racism our community is facing is very real, and those boys need to learn that it is not acceptable. If they get away with that kind of behavior at that age, in a few years, it may escalate and they may become violent. Not the asshole. Somehow boys are always able to have their horrendous behavior excused by, they're young, they didn't know any better, but this ruined their academic career or athletic career. Whatever consequences they face are nobody's fault but their own. Also, forced apologies after the fact don't mean shit. If they were really sorry they would have apologized when you asked them to repeat themselves, but instead they chose to make further racial comments. Not the asshole. Though their brains aren't fully grown yet, they know enough that that behavior is extremely rude. At least Tehi apologized. Not the asshole. They are young but not so young that they don't know right from wrong. They aren't too young to learn actions have consequences. They're sorry they don't get to play sports. They're not sorry about their behavior. Instead of being ashamed of themselves when you called them out, they doubled down, repeated themselves, and made it worse. The only thing they're sorry for is that you figured out who they are. Full props to the coach. Not the asshole, and your brother is 100% wrong. Not the asshole. You didn't freak out at them in the store and did a great job by reaching out to someone they respect. Racism should not be tolerated, especially so blatantly. Not the asshole. Very well handled. Not the asshole at all. Good for you. Words and actions have consequences, and hopefully these boys learn from this. If they're old enough to understand using racism to intimidate a stranger, they're old enough to face the consequences. Not the asshole at all. Edit. Also, I like how Karen, which was a term originally coined to describe a white person being racist and or harmful in public, has shifted to mean any woman speaking her mind or standing up for herself, which I don't like. Not the asshole. Genius move to identify them by their soccer jerseys. I don't think I'd have thought of that. Fantastic that the coach took it seriously and is punishing them. Hopefully these two teenagers have learned that actions have consequences and that racism is unacceptable. Not the asshole. By reporting him, and by extension maybe the whole team, they are learning in real time what the consequences are for behavior that is racist and wrong. If more people did this, perhaps this world would be a little better. Not the asshole, but you know this. Not the asshole. You were absolutely right to report this racist behavior to the coach. Those teens were old enough to know better than to say those horrid things. They deserve their punishment. Who knows how they'd behave in the future if they weren't called on it while young. Are you supposed to wait to report them until you're physically harmed? Of course not. Not the asshole. It's good that they learned that actions have consequences and that racism is not acceptable regardless of the age. Good for you for standing up for yourself and calling him out. Absolutely not the asshole. Their behavior was reprehensible and they received a just punishment for their actions. NTA. Actions have consequences. The younger they learn, the better. Not the asshole. They are old enough to know better. And sounds like their coach handled it appropriately. Not the asshole. You did not overreact. You refused to let racism slide. More people need to do what you did and not make excuses because they are only kids. Glad the coach took it seriously. Good for him. Not the asshole. Actions have consequences. Racism, hate and bigotry always deserve consequences. This is a valuable lesson that I hope they take with them throughout their lives. Not the asshole. If 13-year kids aren't held responsible for their behavior, they grow up to be whole grown-ups. They still might, but at least now they've been told this isn't acceptable behavior and it has consequences. I have a nephew roughly that age. It would never have even occurred to him to say something like that. They're plenty old enough to know better, and maybe these consequences now will help them learn to behave better before it becomes the next viral incident that keeps them from getting that job they wanted. Not the asshole. My 7-year-old knows better. Not the asshole. You didn't ruin their summer. They did when they decided to do that racist shit. Actions have consequences and all that. You weren't planning on having him removed from the games, you just wanted the coach to know about how their players acted. I did similar years ago. My daughter was playing soccer and we were on the oval watching the game when a boys' soccer team from another school came to watch. The game was next. There was a girl on the other team playing in a hijab. They made reference to her hijab being a way to cover her excess hair and made several degrading comments about the amount of hair girls who wear hijabs have. I spoke with the coach on the day, but I also emailed the head of the soccer club. I have no regrets. I wasn't the only parent who had to listen to it. No one should have to. Period. Not the asshole for sure. Better they learn the consequences of that kind of behavior now. You did him a favor. Not the asshole, and thank you for making the world better for all of us. Those kids should thank you, too, for teaching them that mean behavior has consequences now while the consequences aren't as severe. Hate crime convictions are no joke, and neither is hate speech. Thank you. Not the asshole. Agreed with other comments, better to have their racist actions have consequences now rather than chalk it up to, boys will be boys. They are 13, they know what they are doing. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if someone at home is feeding this racist drivel into their heads. Not the asshole with how dangerous anti-Asian behavior has gotten in this country lately, you did the right thing by calling him out. Hopefully they learned something from this. Not the asshole, they meant it all right. They just thought no one would know who they were, so they were safe to say those awful things. Actions have consequences. I think you did exactly right. Not the asshole. What you did was smart. If a kid I coached did that while in uniform, you better believe I'd want to know about it. Not the asshole, they deserve to lose all extracurriculars. 13 is not an excuse for the way they acted and reacted. Not the asshole. Good job. You didn't ruin their summer, they did by their actions. Lol, modern ATIA is just people posting stories where they know they're in the right for pats on the back. In what universe is punishing racists being an asshole? When you're publicly identifying yourself as an employee of a particular company, a member of a particular group, or even a resident of a particular building, you are representing that establishment even if you're on your personal time. If you are identifiable and acting outside of your affiliation's code of conduct, you will likely face consequences to those actions. That's a hard lesson many have to learn, especially these days with social media being so accessible. At least they learned young and got kicked out of a few soccer games. Better that than be blacklisted from a career for saying that to someone while wearing their work uniforms. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. The actions you took could be helping to prevent violent hate crimes in the future or simply prevent other Asian people from experiencing verbal harassment. Either way, you did good. That behavior needs to be stamped out immediately and aggressively. If they got away with it, it might continue and escalate. Not the asshole. You did him a favor. Now they have a chance in hell of reflecting on their actions and improving their behavior. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Take good care of yourself. Not the asshole. As a coach, one of the first conversations I have with my team is to let them know that anytime they put on a shirt with the school, team, sport, etc., they become a representative of that. There are eyes and ears everywhere. You do some dumb shit away from me, a good few times it's gonna get reported. When you do something wrong and a stranger sees, it isn't you that looks wrong, it's the program that's on your shirt that looks bad. End the asshole in any way, and hopefully these young adults learned a lesson.